Please welcome to the stage Justin Lall of Gallup and Tim Welsh of CCC Intelligent Solutions.
Well, first of all, thank you to Dr. Jackson and the entire Future Forward team for setting up such a beautiful event and such a beautifully distracting view. I'm going to sit this way so I can fully engage in this conversation here, Tim. I'm Justin Lall, principal with Gallup. I'm joined by Tim Welsh, and one of the reasons I'm so excited for this conversation is that Tim is one of the leaders that I've seen that fully embodies purpose in his work, not just as a tagline or a slogan or something that looks good on a boilerplate, but something that you really live out from what I've seen. Tim, for those of you that don't know, is the president of CCC Intelligent Solutions, an industry-leading platform for the insurance industry. Before that, Tim was the vice chair of U.S. Bank and has led a long career at McKinsey before that as well. So Tim brings a really unique perspective to this conversation on purpose. So I want to start the conversation with a very simple question. Tim, what is purpose?
Thanks, Justin. First of all, great to be with all of you. Honored, Dr. Jackson, for being in this amazing group. I am certainly a part of the coalition of the willing, so great to be with all of you. When I think about purpose, I think it's a very simple statement. Purpose is, why do we do the things that we do? It is the answer to the question, why. The good news about purpose is that each of us can have many answers to that question. We may have family reasons or personal passions or whatever, but there are many reasons. And another nice thing about purpose is that all of the answers are equally valid. My purpose is no better or no worse than Justin's and no better than any of you. So that's the answer to the question of what purpose is. It's why. So people say, when Justin mentioned my career, I was a senior partner at McKinsey, I was a vice chair of a bank, I'm president of a software company. People say to me, that makes no sense. Nobody does that. You weren't a consultant, then a banker, then a software person. I said, it would be helpful if you had known me in college. If you had known me in college, you would have thought I was going to be a Catholic priest, because I thought I was going to be a Catholic priest. And after I decided that wasn't the right way for me to live out my faith, what I have tried to do is be helpful to people when I was a consultant, or when I was a banker, or now at a software company where we help people who have had car accidents. So the theme that runs through my sense of purpose is all about how do I help as many people as possible in as many different ways as possible. And that's how I live that out professionally. Justin and I have shared a story that you get to frame your own sense of purpose. There's a story that says a priest was walking through a medieval village, and he says to the person who's laying brick, he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm a bricklayer, I'm laying brick. He walks to the next person, and he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm a bricklayer, I'm building a wall. He says to the third person, what are you doing? He says, I'm a bricklayer, I'm building a cathedral to the glory of God. All of those were great answers on purpose. We get to define how we create meaning at work, how we choose it. We can frame it as any way we want. I chose to frame my journey as a personal journey to help as many people as possible in as many ways as possible through the work that I do in a variety of industries.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. You know, this actually maps really well into what we see in the data at Gallup. We had recently run a study of 4,500 employed Americans to ask them about their sense of purpose. And one of the big things that we found from that study was that individuals that had a high sense of purpose in their work were 5 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs. 5 times. It's a massive, massive driver of engagement. So, Tim, my question to you is, what do you make of that? Does that align with what you're seeing, this driver of engagement being purpose?
Hugely. I think for those of you who have not seen Gallup's work on purpose, it is unbelievably compelling. Right? The connection between personal purpose and engagement is very, very high. And if you think about it, what all of us are trying to do as leaders is we're trying to get incremental effort out of our teams, right? We're trying to help them perform at their best, be the best version of themselves. I want everybody on my team to be thriving. Right? I want them to come to work and be at home as joyful, fulfilled people. That's the goal, right? And now that we know from Gallup that if your personal purpose and your work purpose are aligned, that you will be more engaged, you will be more alive, right? That's the goal. And so we as leaders have the opportunity to talk about what is the purpose of our work? Why do we do what we do? At CCC, we talk about people who have had a car accident. We help them to move their life forward, right? We're not a software company. We're in the business of helping people get their life back together. So if you as an individual person at CCC like helping people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, this company aligns with your personal purpose. Right? So the more of that you get, the more alignment between personal purpose and work purpose, that's what Justin has shown. And our team has embraced this. He came to speak to our group, and they were blown away by the data. So if you haven't shared it with your team, I would encourage you to do that. It's incredibly compelling.
I appreciate the commercial there. That's very kind of you. And this is, helpful when we're thinking about, driving engagement in the best of our people here. But there's also a retention story in the data as well. One thing that we found from the research that Tim had referenced was that those individuals that had a high sense of purpose were much less likely to be burnt out at work, much less likely to report feeling stressed at work, also much less likely to be looking for a job while they're employed, so that less likely to turn over. And so there's an attraction and retention story kind of built in here. What do you think about that, Tim, when you're thinking about how can purpose be a driver of retention for your top talent?
This is hugely important, Justin. This notion that purpose helps you attract great people and keep great people, okay? I've just been in the process. I'm new to my company. I've been there about a year. I'm bringing in a lot of new people into the company. When we bring people in, we specifically say to them, here's what our purpose is. If this isn't aligned with your personal sense of purpose, that's just fine. You should work somewhere else. Right? But if this is aligned with what you want to do, then there's no better place to do it. And what we are finding is that is bringing people in droves, right? Because people say, gosh, I haven't heard as explicitly a conversation about we're not just an AI software company, we're actually doing good in the world. I want to do good in the world, so I want to come work here. And that also connects to retention, right? Because why would I want to leave? If my personal purpose aligns with my work purpose, and I'm getting to be the best version of myself every day or almost every day, I don't think I'd ever want to leave that environment, right? Now, we're not perfect. We're certainly not creating that every day, but we're trying. Right? And this insight that you've had about retention and traction and purpose is hugely important.
Thank you, Tim. And I want to zoom back into your work day to day at CCC. You mentioned a really good example about on the attraction side. Can you tell us a little bit more? How does purpose show up on your day-to-day life?
So I'll give you a couple of examples of how we do it. So when you think about the purpose that we're trying to do, has anybody in this room had a car accident? Okay, almost everybody has had a car accident, right? What I've been going around the world, I've been asking people if they've had a car accident. What you quickly find out is that it's a hugely traumatic experience for people. If I asked you to tell me the story of your car accident, if you're anything like the thousands of other people that I have talked to in the last year, you could tell me immediately where you were, what was happening to you, etc. And by the way, if your spouse or your kid was in a car accident, you can remember their accident even more vividly than you can remember your own. Right? It's super powerful. So first of all, Justin, we just talk about that. We talk about the fact that this is what we're doing. And we get people to reflect on their own experiences, the experience of friends, to say, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. We're helping to do this. So finding people a chance to talk about it. The second thing that we ask people to do is we ask them to share stories about their best self. When are you at your best? I don't know how many of you have asked your teams those stories, but it is unbelievably powerful. When people are sharing best self stories, you can drop a pin. It is so quiet. And then we say, okay, the third is, tell us about your strengths. We're big believers in strength finders because we believe everybody is special. And so those are practical. Talk about the purpose, make it very explicit what you're doing. Ask people to talk about when they're at their best self, and how it connects to purpose. And third, talk to them about their strengths and help everybody remember that we are surrounded by people who are special, because we all have strengths, and you as a leader, your job is to help connect those strengths to the purpose so people can be their best self.
You use the term purposeful innovation at CCC. Mm-hmm. Can you unpack that term for us a little bit? What does that mean, and how does that exist in CCC today?
So purposeful innovation drives our product. When you think about having a car accident, you think about what happens to the person who's had that car accident. We are designing our products so that they do two things. They make it really easy for someone who's in that terrible situation to try to resolve their claim. And by the way, any of you who've had a claim, I know it's not nearly as easy as you'd like it to be. We're working on it, right? But that's connecting purpose to innovation. And the second thing that we do besides the product design is we then go to our clients and say, how do we all work together in different ways so that we can achieve this common purpose? In fact, our conference next week, the whole theme that would bring the whole industry together is Together on Purpose. Right? So that the whole industry, body shops, car insurance companies, parts manufacturers are all talking about the same sense of purpose, so we can innovate together across the whole ecosystem so that we can make those people who've had a car accident, help them have a better day.
I want to take a look into the future here. One of the things that we're seeing in our data is that younger workers, particularly Gen Z, are least likely to report having a high sense of purpose, but also most likely to need it, meaning they experience burnout at higher rates than the rest of the working population. What can you tell us, what advice do you have for this group when it comes to thinking about the future of work, younger workers, even the new AI integrations that might change how we do work fundamentally?
This is such an important point, Justin. What I tell our teams is I say, look, if you are my age, this might be new language to you, purpose and all of that, and the connection between personal purpose and work purpose. But I say, for the Gen Zs, the millennials, et cetera, this is why they do what they want to do. These are people who buy, coffee or other things based on the purpose of the organization. This resonates in their soul, and so if we're not talking about it, we're not going to be a compelling workplace for my kids and people about their age, right? So this is something that I think is a really important attraction and retention lever for younger generations, and frankly, I think it's something that folks as old as I am can learn from younger generations, that we don't have to be two separate people, one outside of work, one in work. We can be the same person trying to live out our purpose at work in the same way that we do at home.
Tim, I think we have time for one last question here. With this group here of leaders and people leaders and overall organization leaders, what's one piece of advice you would give to this group when they're thinking about increasing purpose in their work?
Just one piece of thought for this to leave you with is, you cannot talk about this enough. It requires business leaders of all kinds to be constantly in front of people, asking them about their purpose, asking them how it connects to their best self, asking them about their strengths. I start every one of my team meetings with somebody on the team sharing a purpose story. Right? Very simple. But boy, I will tell you, some of them have been the most poignant stories I've ever heard. It can be very hard to transition from a purpose story to whatever is next on our agenda. But it's a powerful thing to be able to do, to remind every person to say, why are we here? Why are you here? So I'd encourage, you can't talk about it enough, and if you just do one thing of instill it in your team meetings across the company, it'll make a huge difference.
Tim, thank you so much for being with us. Please help me in joining and welcoming Tim, or thanking Tim for his comments.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin and Tim.